Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
All right, that sound, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. That means it is time for our Conservative Future segment. Welcome to the program. We have Mr. Dean Marks is on the line. Dean, welcome to the program, sir.
Hey, Paul. Happy to be here.
Yes, sir. Glad that you could make it. So, Dean, I think I interviewed one of your colleagues last week, Mr. Andrew Reno, and he did a great job on this segment. Yeah, and so I wanted to have you on as well. Tell everybody what you do right now, Dean.
Yeah, so I am, I guess, kind of exactly similar to Reno. I'm the field director for all of Central Arkansas, but I also kind of got Southern as well. So I go basically all of Congressional District 2, as well as all the way, if anything pops up, from Texarkana to Crossett. So I'm kind of all over the place.
All right, and that's with Americans for Prosperity Arkansas, the field director down in Central Arkansas. So,
yes, sir.
Okay, so this segment, Dean, I'm sure you know, but just to tell our audience, this segment is to highlight, younger conservatives who, are going to, who are progressing and through the future and everything else. It's the kind of looking ahead. There's a lot of people who feel like, hey, there are no young conservatives, and this is trying to address the fact that that's not necessarily the case. And so, Dean, why don't you tell us how you became a conservative?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess just a little about my background. I'm from a pretty rural part of Arkansas in southeast Arkansas. Grew up, I guess it was there. It was kind of primarily a Democratic region for the state. But with our family, we really didn't really talk politics. We didn't really have much of anything until I got to college. And when I got to ASU, went to ASU and studied economics, and decided that I wanted to try to be as involved as I could with school and organizations, because growing up in a rural town, there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity to get involved with kind of local things and get involved with school and things like that. And so I just kind of signed up for everything I could. And one of my members of my fraternity, I apologize, I'm driving.
Oh, it's all right.
Meeting, but one of my members of you're fine. So one of the members of my fraternity invited me to go to a college Republicans meeting. And so anyway, just showed up, and at that point, I probably couldn't tell you the difference in a Republican and a Democrat. I didn't have much of an outlook, and one way or another, at this meeting, they happened to be holding elections, and wound up becoming the president for the organization. I'll never forget that they handed me a bank account with a whopping $6 in it and a chapter roster with 5 names. So had a lot of ground to cover, and so I just started calling around and trying to see what we could get our organization involved with, and got a hold with Rick Crawford, Congressman Crawford's campaign, and helped him out in 2012, and kind of got a taste of it there, and hooked up with Chase Duggar, and helped out on in 2012 with a lot of the state house races. And I think it was, before, it was just more of kind of a competitive thing for me. It was, it was kind of us versus them. And I was really intrigued by that. But it was when we, I think it was 2012 when we swept the House as Republicans. And, it kind of dawned on me the gravity of why this is important, and this does shape policy. And so, I think that was probably the start, and then.
That's hang on. I want to stop. That's interesting. That's a little unique. A lot of times, people their story is, hey, I was raised in a really traditional, really conservative home. That's how I got my influence. But here's an example of you actually going off to college and actually learning the difference between the two in the first place. You mentioned something about studying economics. Was there anything about studying economics where you were like, more regulation, more government is actually hurting the potential for an individual or a business owner's success?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I was going to go, was especially when professors found out I had that title, they kind of looked at me a little different. It seemed like, especially in the economics department, we had there's one professor, I won't say his name, but he was very biased. ASU had some good professors, and we had some very biased ones. And this one, it was kind of the ongoing joke in the class was, well, if you don't know the answer, just say increase government spending and increase taxes, and you'd be right about half the time, or probably more than half the time, probably about 80% of the time. And I think we talked about this the last time I saw you, just to show kind of what it was like. I know that you did a debate with the college Republicans and Democrats when I was in school, and I know that quite a few professors that were on the opposite side came out to make a point of, saying that our side was wrong. And
yeah, it was interesting. I remember that debate, and I really appreciate getting the opportunity. I know it was me on the side. I think specifically we wanted to talk about the minimum wage of some kind. I think that was one of the issues, and it was me, and it was a professor from Arkansas State who was against my position, Professor Gary Latonich, who actually ended up running, I believe, as a Democrat in the first congressional race at one point, one of these years, a little while ago.
That's correct.
Yeah. Anyway, my position was, I came straight out and say it. Like, I don't understand. Like, and people were in the audience, I remember, were shocked when I was like, yeah, I don't believe in a minimum wage, because I think you're actually, you're telling an individual what they can contract their labor for, and this is assuming that people are going to abuse that and pay someone slave labor when when what you're really doing is saying, hey, if you're not valuable right now because you don't know how to weld and you can't be paid $15 an hour because this particular business owner isn't going to make any money on that. But, if you want to come in while you're working this other job, if you want to come in and you want to train, I can pay you $5 an hour until you actually can learn the skill, and then it's useful. And I don't agree with the government. This is my whole argument. The government doesn't need to come in and try to regulate what is a private agreement. And the whole minimum wage system just kind of operates on this idea that people who may be of lower stature in the economic the economic rankings are not smart enough to make their own decisions about what they want to do with their lives. And I reject that as well, because I believe the power of the individual. Anyway, those were my thoughts. People were kind of, I think, appalled by them, and the professor.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You should have seen the reaction to there. They might have thought you had said something just unbelievable. I remember the reaction was amazing. But yeah.
Oh man. Okay, so Dean, I know you got to go. I know you got a meeting at 5. I wanted to ask you one more question. So conservatism means a lot of things down to a lot of different people. So some politicians campaign that they're conservative, and we really don't know what that means. And limited government, conservatism. What is a conservative to you? What does that mean? Your ideal person or politician that's going to represent you, they say that they're a conservative. What would you like them to describe that term as?
Yeah. I think conservatism it gets a bad rap a lot of times just because of maybe the way it's branded. I feel like if you ask your average college person or young person, or they'll say conservatism, it's people that want to hang on to the past. They don't want to progress as a society, and they want to take us back to the 1960s. But that's I think that's so far from the truth, is that conservatism, they're the people that want innovation, that free market, creates the stuff that we all need. And I think what we're trying to conserve is, the ideas of classical liberalism, that, democracy upheld by rule of law, and the idea of economic freedom. Two of the issues that I've seen just kind of in my brief time in politics, two things that I'm kind of passionate about is occupational licensing is one that, the government comes in and says, hey, and they're just completely, sometimes just completely arbitrary for what is licensed. I can't remember if it was Arkansas or another state, but it was EMT has less training and time than a florist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times it just creates protectionism for people, and just stops the free market. There's some things that you probably do need some kind of technical training for. If somebody was going to operate on my heart, I'd probably feel a lot safer if they had a medical certification, or an electrician that's doing my lighting. I would probably want it, but some things just it gets a little egregious, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up. We have just scheduled for a half hour on October the 11th, the good folks from the Arkansas Center for Research in Economics. They're going to be coming on the program to talk about, they have a new paper out about occupational licensing and the state of Arkansas, and how, we have failed I think we failed in Arkansas at a lot of things, tax reform. We failed at, getting rid of a lot of these regulatory, impediments. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to mention that. But Dean, I appreciate it, sir. I appreciate your conservative thoughts. I appreciate you coming on the program, and I know you got to get to a meeting, so we'll end the interview, but we need to do it again soon, and just keep in touch, okay?
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
All righty. Thank you, folks. That concludes another Conservative Future segment here on the Paul Harrell program. If you know of anybody who's young, we forgot to ask Dean how old he is, but he's like, I don't know, he's in his 20s. So, I'm sorry. If you know of anybody who's young and conservative, wants to come on this program, feel free. Give us a call, 870-275-9799. Back in just a moment.